Perfect. So, welcome everybody to this webinar about business opportunities in the UK mobility and transport sector markets. My name is Sanni Remonen, and I will be the moderator of this webinar. I am an export manager for ITS Finland. This webinar is hosted as part of a project called ISMEF, funded by Interreg Central Baltic Program. The target of this project is to support Finnish and Estonian SMEs and companies to do business in foreign markets. This webinar will be recorded and shared after this webinar. I would ask every participant to keep their mics muted during the presentations, and if you have any questions, you may write them into the chat or ask during the Q&A of this session or after the presentations. So with that, let's go quickly through the agenda, which has been shared to you. First, actually, I will give a couple of words about our upcoming trip to the UK, to London and Manchester during March, with between ITS Finland and ITS Estonia. There's an interesting program coming up for that. And after these introductions, we will have short introductions also from Finland and Estonia in the UK. So from Estonian Embassy and Business Finland, who both help Finnish and Estonian companies in the UK markets. Next, we will have our market expert, Mark Dodsworth, with his team presenting various mobility and transport sector opportunities in the UK that may be interesting to our Finnish and Estonian audience, followed by an overview of the transport technology sector by Max Sugarman from ITS UK. And Max will also give an overview about an event called Interchange in March, which is the event that we are also visiting with the delegation that we are arranging for March. Then, followed by Mark and Max's presentations, we'll have two company presentations from Bikeep and Ramboll to really explain their experiences from the UK markets. So, quick words about our visit to London and Manchester, 3rd to 6th March of 25. We have created new opportunities within this delegation trip to really master your pitch for the UK market. You'll have a training there going through how to really approach the UK decision makers. And within the Interchange event that happens in Manchester, you get access to key UK decision makers and really get to learn about the markets and what's going on in UK. At the same time of Interchange, there is also the annual ITS UK seminar, which is definitely offers interesting contents to anybody who's interested about these markets. During this trip, we are also hosting a networking event with the ambassadors of Finland and Estonia to the UK, where you get to network with the right people in the markets. Here is the agenda. I will share these slides with everybody after this, so you'll get to look in more detail. And as said, Max will tell a bit more about the interchange and why it is such a good event for us to go to in the UK. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to give the word to the first presenters of this webinar, Kristi Torim and Andreas Heiki Pant from Estonian Embassy, followed then by Perry Dain from Business Finland. So Kristi and Andreas, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sanni. Good morning to everyone. I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Kristi Torim. I'm an economic counselor at the Estonian Embassy in London. And also I wanted to introduce you a little piece of paper that might be of interest to you. Estonia has produced an export strategy to UK, and this is available publicly in our website. Including to our Finnish companies as well, if you're interested. So it goes a little bit into depth of 10 different sectors, including on smart mobility. So that might be an interesting read to everybody who is interested in entering UK market. So I'm happy to share a link with you all, and then also welcome you a good webinar today. Heiki, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and I agree with you, Kristi. It's a very good report. If anyone is interested, please contact Kristi or me. We're happy to share those sector files, and it has a lot of sector-specific information available to you. Now, I will try to share my screen here, and if I activate my slides, I would request some of you to say, can you see the slides?
Yes.
You can. Excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm Heiki. I'm based at the Estonian Embassy. I work together with Kristi. It is our job to help Estonian companies into the UK. I don't work with Finnish companies predominantly because my salary is paid by the Estonian taxpayers. However, I have been doing this now for quite a number of years, and I've developed some experiences with various sectors, various success stories, various failures. I will very briefly try to tell you about, on a nutshell, what to maybe pay a little bit of attention to. I know Mark later on will do a very good presentation to you about the nuances of the British market, what you have to take into account, cultural differances, etc. Now, I thought if I only have about 9 minutes, I have to do it extremely quick. So I ran through the ChatGPT as you do these days, just to see what is it, how to enter the UK market. It's all available for you do that search. And on the nutshell, I don't disagree with any of it. It kind of tells you that you have to understand your product, your market, your pricing levels, market research, adapt to cultural differences, local network, which I'm sure Mark will tell you all precisely about. And then later on, it gets to government and trade supports and localized strategy, because eventually you will have to select a place where you start your market entry. Now, I would like to pay attention to the point number 3, the adapt to cultural differences. And I will do so through 2 examples of my customers that I worked with over the last couple of years. So, as you are all involved in transport and transport modalities, we'll see here a motorway, or as in England they call it highway. And first, I'm not going to tell you that in Britain they drive on the wrong side of the road, or the other side of the road. Of course, in Estonia and probably in Finland, we would say that, oh, they drive on the wrong side of the road. Mark will correct you and say, please do not say wrong side of the road. Please say on the left side of the road, because that would be a little bit more polite towards the British. Now, if we see a standard setting of a motorway, the way and I'll give you the next slide if I want to highlight which way we are traveling. So let's say this is a standard European setting of traveling on the right-hand side, and I have an arrow there on a fast lane, which we know as an inside lane. Now, if you come to the UK and start having a conversations in your head, you're thinking, if I'm traveling on the inside lane, on the fast lane of the motorway, and then you very quick come to realization when you have that conversation with the British person. Of course, they drive on the left-hand side of the road. But not only that, what we thought was the fast lane, the inside lane, of course, the British see as the outside lane. Already you have cultural nuance, which you have to take it as really as basic. Just get the terminology right. So if you are talking about overtaking on an inside lane, you can't really tow. In the UK, you're not allowed to overtake on an inside lane, which is the slow lane. Just cultural nuance example. Another example comes through a property technology company of mine, which had building management systems, and they had all these different modalities of measuring air temperature, humidity, etc. in various rooms. And they had a separate panel for controlling the bathroom in particular, with also regards if the bathroom, if the washing machine is in operation or not. Until we came to realization that, hang on, this business model will not work in the UK because most people have got their washing machines in the kitchen. So again, you design the product according to, where in most European countries, the washing machine sits in the bathroom. In Britain, there is this very, very bizarre rule that you're only allowed to run a washing machine in a bathroom until you have 3 meter length of cable from the plug, and it has to be, the plug has to be 3 meters away from shower or the bath. In reality, nobody in England has a bathroom that has this extra size of 3 meters to run your cables. Again, talking about cultural nuances, understanding how the local market operates, and also how the different utilities run. Again, we had in last week in Estonia, we had market seminar when we had some amazing British big companies represented there as well. And one of the examples that we saw when Peter, the guy from Newcastle, who was presenting, constantly kept throwing in the conversation northeast, northwest, in the southwest, in the southeast. It's very difficult. Of course, when you are trying to come to the UK, you really have to understand the basic terminology. Where is northeast? What do the people keep in mind when they talk about northwest, the Midlands, the west of the country, the Black Country, or southeast, where London is? All these different nuances, and I'm sure Mark will cover those. And of course, then we get to the local networks. We are talking about 68 million people here, close to 70 now almost. So the locality really is something that you have to pay attention to. But I will very, very speedily wrap up and say it is totally doable if you want to achieve success. These are the unicorns that Estonia has. Most of them have got their offices in London as well, or in the southeast of England. And some of them have gained phenomenal success. Some of them now been taken over. Moniz, for example, has been taken over by another company. And in modality, we see the Starship here. They do a large pilot with the co-op group, etc. It is totally doable. And of course, the cherry on the cake here is when we had president visits. It was in the city, taken 2 years ago. It is our job to connect the Estonian companies, the success stories, and the people who are at the start of their journey. We connect them with the UK suppliers. We work with a lot of different networks, and I'm sure you will hear later on today of how essential it is to build your local network here, have your support systems. And just to sum it up, I have not seen yet a situation where somebody gets contacted and says, "Oh, you contacted me. You said you have a nice product. Oh, I really need your product. Please start selling to me." It doesn't quite work like that. It takes years of building up relationships. Which brings me to any of the questions you may or may not have.
Thank you, Heiki. I think we'll have to move on to a quick introduction from Perry, but I hope that both you and Kristi will put in your contact details in the chat so people can grab those there.
Of course.
Over to you, Perry, please.
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And you can see me okay. The lighting's not very good here, but hopefully you can see me okay.
We can.
And lovely to see Petra and Mark. I've worked closely with Petra and Mark over the years. So it's always an immense pleasure to know that you're in immensely good hands. Petra and Mark are the best brains in the business when it comes to event management. And that's not mere flattery. That is an honest truth. It's a fact. And also Nick, I can see Nick is on the line too. Anyway, I'll use my 5 to 10 minutes. Hopefully it won't take any longer than
5, please, Perry.
5, okay, then, well, shout when I've got to 4 then, Sanni. Okay, so I'll give you a brief overview of Business Finland. I think that may sort of put things in perspective. I've been with the organisation for 23 and a half years, so I do have some experience, like Andreas, of helping international foreign companies entering new markets. But Business Finland, as we know, is the Finnish government's trade export association. It's part of the Team Finland network. The Team Finland network in Finland includes Finnvera, funding, the local ELU centres, which are the local development agencies. In the UK, it's the Chamber of Commerce and the Institute. Obviously, the embassy leads the Team Finland entity. Business Finland has 760 employees, 47 offices in 40 countries. 16 of those are in Finland, working with the local agencies. And Business Finland's key responsibility is identifying business opportunities in new markets and to guide SMEs through the internationalization process. Very straightforward. And that's our government, that's our remit from the government. Our services are free of charge, that's important. And fundamentally, there are 4 distinct units within Business Finland. We have Visit Finland, which is tourism. Invest in Finland, which is the foreign direct investment into international markets. International markets into Finland. That's an important distinction. We have Growth Capital, which is relationships with the venture capitalists. And we have export. I work in the export part of the business. From a Finnish perspective, the key responsibilities in Finland would be funding for R&D, government funding for R&D and business development. That's very important. Finnish companies on the call may be very familiar with the funding tools. They're readily available and accessible, subject to certain criteria. We have government-funded programs. Mark will be familiar with low carbon built environment. That was last year and the year before. And this year we have AI, quantum, 6G, defence, digital resilience. And historically, we have digital trust and intelligent vehicles working in partnership with Frost & Sullivan. In Finland, they are responsible for account management. That's obviously managing relationships with the SME community. And obviously their responsibility is very much to manage the relationship with ecosystems in Finland, VTT being an obvious example. In local markets, e.g. the UK, similar to Andreas, obviously our responsibilities are, and again, it's free of charge services, business coaching on routes to market. Andreas touched on that point. It's not as simple as somebody phoning up and saying, oh, I want your product. It takes a lot of time and effort, and underpinned by a very solid value proposition and business model. And our job is to help companies understand the importance, particularly in the UK, of value propositions, a good sales pitch, a good business model, and very importantly, a very good business case of why that company exists and for whom it has value. Again, obviously, we focus on local business culture. That varies geographically. So I'm very familiar, being an Englishman, with local business culture. My background's marketing, so I've done this for a living for many, many years. As Andreas pointed out, business culture is a critical success factor. Failure to understand that could be a showstopper in all markets. So it's important to understand the business culture that is relevant to individual markets. We provide market information, very, very importantly, which is where Mark and Petra come in. We provide access to business contacts. That's a key remit for Business Finland, mandated again by the government. That's one of our KPIs. How big is your network and how frequently do you contact that network? So that's a key performance indicator for the whole of Business Finland in the local network, our black book of contacts. And also to complement the relationship that our colleagues in Finland have with the local ecosystems, e.g. VTT, we have to build relationships in the UK with local ecosystems, and that would include Cambridge Wireless, for example, the catapults in the UK. We're doing a project at the moment with the compound semiconductor. So that's a very, very important part of our remit. Shout, Sanni, when I'm running out of time. And the UK main focus is VC relationships, because obviously, as you know, UK in general, London in particular, has a very extensive network of VCs. So we match the Finnish companies with that network for local funding. And as you know, in Finland, or probably know, we have SLUS, which is a major phenomenon in London, in Helsinki, related to building a network of VC venture capitalists globally and bringing them to Finland every November, I think, to woo them. Very much part of our service offering is business coaching, sales pitch, value propositions, as mentioned earlier. So we do hands-on, and we know very, very good local consultants who provide that service. And of course, networking for Finns, networking events, obviously, and this call today is very much about the forthcoming networking events with ITS Estonia, ITS Finland, and using the embassies as a sort of conduit. So that is hopefully a sort of a brief summary, but hopefully comprehensive. Just briefly before I finish, my responsibility is also global. So I'm a global opportunity leader for what is known as a global industry leadership team. My focus area is Digi. So I work with all of the 47 trade centres, helping them harvest opportunities from their market and matching that to the Finnish offerings. That's very much part of, again, what Business Finland's remit is. We have a number of people in the global network. Their job via networking and relationships with the ecosystems is to identify, it could be sales leads, or it could be Horizon 2, Horizon 3 opportunities. So we provide that kind of foresight via a government platform. So that's me. Any questions before I hand back the floor to Sanni? Hope I didn't rattle off too quickly, but I was aware of the fact I had 5 minutes. Sorry, Sanni, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Yes, I'm muted. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Perry. And if there are any questions, let's take it in the chat and move forward with Mark's presentation, for which both Heiki and Perry already kind of gave a good shout out to why Mark is also working with us within finding these opportunities in the UK. So Mark, please introduce yourself and your team, and let me know when to change slides.
Thank you very much, Sanni. And thank you very much to ITS and ITL, and indeed ITS UK for inviting us to work on this project with you. We're absolutely delighted. Yes, so we're delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you today. The main brief I have actually is less on the cultural and more on the opportunities. So I'm going to be providing you with some insights into the opportunities in the UK market in mobility and transport. That doesn't mean that you can't ask me questions about culture and cross-cultural issues. And I will put my contact details in the chat. And of course, I will be with the delegation in March in London and in Manchester. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask me questions about that there, if not in advance through email and even the telephone. But I'm going to concentrate on the opportunities. But first of all, let me introduce my team. We have 3 of them on this call. We've got Peter Riemenschneider, who is working extremely hard with me on the project management side. And I think all of the participating delegates will meet her. You've got Nick Thomas, who is our head of market research, and I'm very grateful for him for helping me to put together these slides. It's been extremely helpful. And we have, I'm delighted to introduce our intern, Sally Sadavila, who is, from her name, you can tell she is Finnish, and she is also on the call. And you will be meeting her, not in Manchester, but in London when you come in March. A little bit about our company. So we've been in business 25 years. This year will be our 25th anniversary, founded in Bristol. Our main areas of activity are market research and analysis, particularly focusing on opportunities and routes to market. We are also very focused on partner selection, so helping our clients and members of delegations to find prospective partners to speak to, and that could be for sales, it could be for strategic alliances, it could be for joint tendering, for example. The third area we've been working a lot on is in the last 15 years is events. And as Perry said, we've worked a lot with Business Finland, FinPro as it used to be, to run a whole series of events. I think we're probably coming well into double figures now over the last 12 years, mostly at the Finnish ambassador's residence. Moving on to the topic of today. So mobility and transport sector opportunities in the UK. Sanni, could you give me my first slide, please? Thank you very much. So what I'd like to do in this short presentation, I believe I have probably about another 25 minutes now. I'll see if I can keep within that time, is to cover 6 sectors for you. And I'm going to give an overview. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail because I'm leaving Max Sugarman from ITS UK to give you some specific examples and cases. I'm going to focus on the overview. We're going to look at passengers and multimodality. Just in case 1 or 2 of you don't know what multimodality is, the definition is multiple modes of transportation to move goods and passengers to optimize efficiency, cost, and sustainability. That's the current definition of multimodality. We're going to look at automotive. We're going to look at electrification. We're going to look at infrastructure and smart cities. We're going to look at logistics, and we're going to look at railway development. Sanni, could I have my next slide, please? Firstly, let's look at passengers and multimodality opportunities. Multimodality can involve at least 2 different types of transport. And the interesting thing there for some of you on this call will be the reliance on effective tracking. That is a key element in optimizing multimodality. So within passengers and multimodality, I've put in micromobility, small vehicles at low speeds, often electric, bikes, scooters, e-cargo bikes, electric micro vehicles. And these are often used in this country, and I'm sure in your countries as well, for the last mile. Just to give you that definition, the last mile is the final stage of delivering a product from a distribution center or hub to the doorstep. And it's actually one of the most important parts of the process because it has a direct impact on customer experience. So that you'll see that phrase last mile in a lot of the market information that we're going to be giving you over the next few weeks. We have a fragmented transport industry in the UK, which makes data consolidation difficult. Digital technologies enable real-time monitoring, predictive maintenance, and continuous improvements of multimodal networks. And we'd like to strongly encourage any of you that are interested in multimodal to look at this trade fair, which is coming up at the National Exhibition Centre in June. There's the website. And I note that this year, there will be an interactive AI clinic being held at Multimodal because the aim is for the visitors to find innovative ideas to solve transport and logistics issues. So it's really becoming an important focus of Multimodal in the coming weeks and months. A good opportunity for you there. Next slide, please. Moving on to automotive. So electric cars, of course, like everywhere, are making inroads, but it's not as fast as some would like. I think we can describe it as a gradual process. There are issues in the UK with charging infrastructure, and we know quite a lot about this. My colleague Nick prepared an extensive report for Business Finland on EV charging infrastructure 2 or 3 years ago, which highlighted some of the main problems and challenges, as well as some of the opportunities for Finnish solutions providers. So it is a big issue in the UK, the quality of the charging infrastructure. There are problems with the prices of cars, of course. EVs are not cheap, still not cheap. There are no significant subsidies here for EVs, unlike in some countries like Norway. We don't have a similar system. And there is supposed to be a ban coming up on petrol and diesel cars, but this is likely to be, I think, delayed, although it's being announced that it will be 2030, but let's see. We have limited penetration of electric commercial vehicles. And here are some statistics. There's the car production for 2024, just under 2 million new cars sold, of which you'll see that at least half are still petrol. And on the commercial vehicle side, we've got 130,000, we've got 350,000 light commercial vehicles, of which you'll see the vast majority are diesel. So not making much progress there, big opportunity. And we've got 35,000 heavy goods vehicles, HGVs as they're called. So CVs, commercial vehicles, LCVs, light commercial vehicles, HGVs, heavy goods vehicles. You'll hear that terminology all the time in the UK. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've highlighted some automotive opportunities for you, which include, of course, EV. And within EV, we've got both charging infrastructure and batteries. Storage is a huge challenge in this country. And we're also highlighting opportunities in AI and in anything to do with reducing emissions. So here's our list. EV charging infrastructure, definitely inadequate. Lots needs to be done. Despite the hype a few years ago, there are really very limited production of batteries, and the much advertised gigafactories have not yet appeared. Driving automation is going to be an opportunity, self-driving vehicles. Here are some more acronyms for you. ZEV, zero emissions vehicles, will be a mandate in many cities moving forward. Already in cities like Manchester and Bristol and London, you will see LEZs and ULEZs. LEZ means low emission zone, and ULEZ stands for ultra low emission zone. You will see those everywhere, and this is going to be policy, I think, across the UK, particularly in urban areas. There's going to be an emphasis on the inclusion of automated and AI-powered features, which is great for you chaps, given your expertise in these areas in both your countries. And technology holistic approach for specific vehicle applications. What do we mean by technology holistic? Viewing your technology ecosystem as an interconnected whole rather than as a collection of separate parts. It involves integrating all your technology systems to work seamlessly together, creating a unified strategy that supports every aspect of your business. The reduction in fossil fuels to meet net zero targets means electrification is going to be very important for homes, vehicles, and railways, amongst others. Storage is also going to be important, and that storage including carbon capture. We're seeing more and more references to carbon capture, a technology which is actually quite advanced in this country. So here are the opportunities. The UK targets for net zero, UK to be energy secure with clean power by 2030. This is a deadline that is likely to be missed, I have to say, but we're doing our best. Electricity storage, which is a challenge. Electrification of homes from renewable sources, including involving heating, cooking, and transportation. Basically, plugs for charging your electric vehicles. Solar is becoming a big opportunity too. We've just had solar panels fitted in our house, and big schemes supported by local government to introduce these. Vehicle electrification, we have a target of 28% of all new vehicles by the end of 25 and 80% by 2030. Again, as I say, I think those targets are likely to slip. And finally, sustainable program of electrification for railways with a mix of technologies, for example, overhead wiring, third rail, as they're called. This is the additional rail to supply electric current, and hydrogen, interestingly, for railways. Next slide, please. So, smart cities overview. We've got a fragmented landscape in the UK. I can actually, I don't think I need to give anybody a definition of smart cities. I will put one in the chat. I've got quite a good definition, but I'm going to leave you to check that. Wikipedia has a very good definition, which you can use. But it's a fragmented landscape in the UK. There are many regional divides, some pockets of excellence, and we highlight Leeds and Edinburgh, for example, Bristol, London, Glasgow, Birmingham. There are housing industry initiatives, and we know that from our work in the low carbon buildings area with Business Finland. We've had a huge amount of interest in Finnish solutions for low carbon construction, with 3 well-attended events in the past 18 months, over 150 companies in the UK attending those events to find out what Finland can offer. Yeah, it's data-driven, but there are concerns over security. And of course, that means big opportunities for anybody operating in cybersecurity. Huge growth area. Finally, Innovate UK. Innovate UK is the main programme for providing grants for projects. And I would refer you to ukri.org to look at those opportunities, some of which could well apply to you and any British partners that you're working with. Next slide, please. So more opportunities. Opportunities will vary from city to city. And We strongly advise you to talk, and you can do this when you come, to the regional investment agencies for each of the British regions. You're going to be in Manchester, that the investment agency there is called Midas. We fully expect you to meet people from Midas when you're in Manchester. And when you're in London, you'll be, we hope, meeting representatives of London and Partners. These people will be able to tell you about key opportunities in their cities. And there are similar agencies in Birmingham, in the northeast of England, in Bristol and Bath, and so on. So talk to those people. There are key challenges to growth, which are data privacy and digital divide. Some key trends are, of course, IoT, AI, and the 5G connectivity program, which is well advanced. Smart city opportunities for suppliers, as I said, will vary. Opportunities include traffic management, connected public transport, smart lighting, surveillance systems, air quality, smart energy, asset tracking and maintenance, and smart public places. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the opportunities in city infrastructure for new technologies, and we've highlighted, based on the research that we're reading at the moment, these include fiber optics, wireless sensor networks, low power sensors based on electromechanical systems known as MEMS in this country, computer vision, and energy harvesting. And I would strongly recommend you to look at this wonderful organization called the Cambridge Centre for Smart Infrastructure and Construction, CSIC. And you will find the website. It's a bit complicated because it's part of Cambridge University, but it's smartinfrastructure.eng.cam.ac.uk. If you Google that organization, I'm sure you'll find them, but that is the website. Very interesting research group producing valuable data for people like you. Next slide, please. So there are a number of technology-driven opportunities in logistics, and here we've listed some of the ones that we've researched. Artificial intelligence for route planning, sustainable fuels and electromobility, forecast for logistics planning with AI, autonomous robots for warehouse work, multimodal solutions for greater resilience. Again, that last mile reference that I mentioned earlier, so important in the supply chain. Digital freight documentation, cloud-based document management, and cybersecurity. Those are the areas where we really see some excellent technology-driven opportunities for people like you. Next slide, please. And then longer-term trends, looking ahead, we would highlight autonomous vehicles for delivery in public spaces. Very interesting. A lot of that's coming from the US, but maybe you're looking at that too in Finland and Estonia. Would be interesting. Autonomous delivery drones in public airspace. Already we're seeing the first deliveries happening with that technology. Blockchain technology along the entire supply chain. And this one, of course, has been around for a bit, but broad application of 3D printing technology. Of course, a lot of these technologies are being proposed by our good friend Elon Musk and his colleagues in Silicon Valley. That's where a lot of this technology is coming from, and which is driving the space. Next slide, please. Okay, something on the railways. The key player in the railway industry in the UK is Network Rail, and they are supported by organisations called TOCs, which stands for Train Operating Companies, and by the main contractors. when we attended an event last year for a Finnish company, Coherent, the Network Rail speaker there focused heavily on net zero and the importance of asset data. So these are clearly things in the minds of the decision makers at organizations like Network Rail. They own the rail infrastructure, they own 2,500 railway stations, but they only manage 20 of the largest stations. The others are managed by the TOCs. They're responsible for the network, which includes the maintenance of 20,000 miles of track. And they're heavily invested in sustainability, net zero, and asset data. Mentioned the TOCs, and then the rail tier one contractors. There's a group of specialist contractors, and we've given you just 4 of the best known names. Not all British, interestingly. You've got a couple of German companies in there, such as Siemens and Ojeil. So Amy and Balfour Beatty are a couple of the British ones. Next slide, please. Okay, where are the opportunities for you? We think they are going to be particularly in smart railway stations. Interestingly, a bit controversially, we're finding that more of the smaller railway stations are not being manned by people. They're actually being controlled remotely for the passenger experience from start to finish. Not everybody's happy with that, but nevertheless, it is happening. So smart railway stations is one area. Smart ticketing, that's certainly very well advanced in this country. So many people now are just having their tickets on their phone and just clicking in and clicking out with their telephones. Flow management, operation management, and here is a web link for Network Rail's digital railway program, so you can see what they are working on and what they're talking about publicly. Next slide, please.
5 minutes, Mark, please.
We're doing fine. I've only got 3 more slides, so we should be fine. 2 more slides. So digital logistics between EU and UK. I think this was actually one of the questions that we've received from you, which we might look at later. So trade and cooperation agreement, known as the TCA, between the UK and the EU in 2021 covers digital trade arrangements. We have the electronic freight transport information, known as EFTI, and this regulation will be fully applied in 2025. And we have an aim to replace paper documents with electronic information. UK government is seeking closer ties with the EU, but there are no plans yet to join EFTI. Brexit has meant increased costs for us here, paperwork and delays. This is less of an issue for service providers. It affects much more manufacturers. So many of you need not worry too much about that, I'm pleased to say. UK Electronic Trade Document Act, an act is an act of Parliament, gives digital versions of certain commercial trade documents the same legal status as paper versions. This will lead to a £1 billion boost over the next decade. So that's that one. Moving on to fleet management. The next slide, please. We've taken some of this data from a report. It's called the UK Fleet Management Market Industry Trends and Forecast. I did send a link to Sanni. Maybe she'll be able to post it for you or send it to you. And there are some interesting statistics on the market. You can see that the market is growing at 10% compound annual growth rate. Drivers include the growth of e-commerce, demand for fuel economy monitoring fleets, and increase in demand for full service leasing. Significant technological advancements in telematics, IoT integration, and predictive analytics. And here are some providers: Aurelius, Verizon, Fleet Check, Zonar. There's Siemens again, AT&T, of course, IBM, Cisco, and Alphabet. And on to the last slide, we've just, to give you a little carrot, really, we've done some very quick research, quick and dirty research, and these appear to be 4 fleet management companies with no obvious software. So maybe they are candidates for you to approach to offer a partnership. Of course, we can provide you with others, many others, but that would have to be another project. Thank you very much for listening, and I think there'll be an opportunity for some questions after my colleague Max Sugarman has spoken. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Mark. And indeed, let's have Max's presentation in between and then quick questions after before moving on to the company's presentations.
Well, thanks, Sanni. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Brilliant. So I'll get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Max Sugarman. I'm Chief Executive of ITS UK. We are the UK Industry Association for Transport Technology, working very closely with ITS Estonia and ITS Finland. And what I wanted to do today is just take you through a bit about us and some of the key initiatives that are going on, maybe just honing in on some of the things that Mark's highlighted upon, but particular initiatives going on in the ITS space. And then the final two bits of the presentation are about Interchange, the event in Manchester that we're running, to give you a sense of that, and also the World Congress in Birmingham, which is coming in 2027, that we're very excited about. So who are we? We are the industry body for transport technology. We're very similar to ITS Finland and ITS Estonia. We have 175 members. And we work very closely with a range of different ITS bodies around the globe. We have 35 MOUs signed up, memorandums of understanding, partnerships with global ITS bodies. And the figures on the bottom are I think they're a bit old, and actually we're currently, we've just launched a project to revise these figures. We think actually they're incredibly conservative, £1.5 billion of sector value. I was looking at the study that was shared on the smart mobility market in the UK and from ITS Estonia, and clearly that highlights about sort of £10 billion of potential value. We say it's about sort of 15 billion as a possibility, but actually encompassing all forms of different transport, from rail, road, public transport, freight. We think these figures should be far higher. So if we do this presentation again in future, once we've had our economic researchers, capital economics, revise the figures, there should be far higher figures to show you. What do we cover in at ITS? Well, any application of technology when applied to transport, and clearly you will know all this because I think you will work in some of these areas. But these are some of the things our members do, and it's not exhaustive. There's a lot more besides that members cover. And just finally, every ITS organisation around the world works a bit differently, and we've kind of really focused on these four areas. We're fundamentally about providing benefits to our members. So we do a lot of events and sharing intelligence, promoting the sector overseas, as ITS Estonia and ITS Finland are doing. We do quite a lot of influencing policy and representing the industry, and there's quite a lot of still decisions to be made about kind of the strategic direction of ITS in the UK, and we kind of gather our members' views to input into that. And then finally, we kind of celebrate the work of ITS providers. We do awards and various other things like that. So this is kind of just, the slide is really to set the state of play in the UK. And what I would say is, I think it's been hinted on by past presentations, but the UK can be quite a complex market. Roughly, we're 70 million people. There's a huge amount of infrastructure. It's worth highlighting there's a huge amount of aging infrastructure, and hence why, as Mark said, asset management for organisations like Network Rail is so critical. They're dealing with bridges and structures that have been there for more than 100 years. So fundamentally, it's quite a big task just keeping that all going. And COVID obviously had an impact on public transport in particular. We are starting to see the figures kick up in terms of bus journeys and rail journeys. But it's worth saying that this government in particular has a real mission to move people back onto public transport and get them out of private car use. And we had an election last summer. The policies around transport and train changed quite considerably around since then, which I can come into a bit. But fundamentally, the government wants to see those figures going up. And it's also just worth saying, this was slightly highlighted before as well, around sort of different regions of the UK. We have a very complicated decision-making structure. So you have organisations like the Department of Transport, our central governing department for all transport in the UK. But transport has also devolved, which means that policies are given out to the governments in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, and also to mayors around the different regions. And what I would say to you is, when you come to the UK, when you meet people, say at interchange, I would try and sort of just talk to them and get their view on what particular region they're talking about. Some of the initiatives I'm going to mention are very England specific. Some are cross-border. And it's worth you sort of knowing and trying to make sure you work out where a particular project or initiative is going on. But fundamentally, rail is Network Rail. The body roads is done by different devolved nations: Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. There's the mayors that are doing mayoral combined authorities around the cities that are doing different things. And then there's also these subnational transport bodies, which kind of cover big regions. So it's quite complicated there and how they work with the mayors. And finally, local authorities at a really local level in terms of how transport runs in a particular part of the country in terms of a small sort of area. So quite complex. And I won't sort of focus on this too much, because I think you've heard from Mark about how a lot of these things are sort of progressing in terms of ITS being a key growth sector. Smart ticketing we've talked about, and I'll come on to a few of these as well. But it is higher on the government's priority list. They definitely see as AI and digitalisation in transport as being key. And there's a lot of different initiatives going on. So it's worth, I'm sure we'll go into some of these shortly. But I said I wanted to focus on just some key initiatives and really just to get you thinking about some of the things that are going on. As I said, this is going to be exhaustive, and I'm probably not going to have the time to cover them in a huge amount of detail. But I'm really happy to take an email, you can have questions emailed to me, or to meet at interchange, or when the delegation comes over as well. So future transport zones. So these were are zones that the last government in 2020 designated to get £92 million of funding to test future mobility schemes, things like micromobility, mobility as a service, mobility credits. There was also things around freight and demand responsive transport, on-demand buses. There was 4 regions picked out: West Midlands, Solent, West of England, Derby and Nottingham, all around different parts of England. And they've basically been progressing this since 2020. And they're at different stages. A lot of these, like the West of England, are seeing their MAS applications coming on board soon. Some, like Solent, have had them over the past year or two. Others, like West Midlands, in the example of MAS, have not progressed the scheme that they were planning to do. But a lot of them have used them for various different funding for various different schemes. So there's also been things like drones and unmanned aerial vehicles, things like mobility credits. That was something that was tried in Solent, and also micro freight and different ways of moving people around and using technology to do so. And the government is currently reviewing that fund, but the funding is still available through these transport bodies, and they're definitely still working on different technological solutions. So worth going and meeting them. Connected and automated vehicles. So this has taken a bit of a jump in the last year. So just before the election was called by the last government, they passed the Automated Vehicle Act. and that basically set up the framework, the legal framework for an automated vehicle. And so what that does is it defines what an AV is. It sets kind of the broad safety standards, what a careful and competent human driver, that's what you might hear about quite a lot in the UK. That's the standard that we want AVs to meet. And then it also sets out things like licensing, monitoring, enforcement at a very high level. And now the work is being done to provide what's called secondary legislation, secondary bills to flesh that out a bit more. It's worth saying there are automated vehicles on the UK roads at the moment. There's a number of trials. If you talk to organisations like Sensic, which helps support some trials, the Catapult, Innovate UK. Also, within government, there's a unit called the Centre for Connected and Automated Vehicles, which is the business department and the transport department coming together to support that. So there's a lot of focus on this, but the trials that have been going on have had someone holding basically the wheel or putting their arms under the wheel because it's illegal up until the bill came in force to have no one driving a car. So now we're moving on to sort of going beyond those trials to talks of a pathfinder scheme, so a scheme that could be launched and show that we can have a more permanent scheme in the UK. It's worth saying that when we talk to people here, it feels like the focus on AVs is a lot different to potentially what's happened in America. It's a much bigger focus on public transport and automated public transport, and also a really big focus on safety in the UK, which means that that I think there's a real caution in some aspects to make sure we get it right before a scheme is launched permanently. And related to the Automated Vehicle Act that came through, and there was a clause in it about digitalising traffic regulation orders, and that if you don't know what a TRO, a traffic regulation order is, it's basically a notice that changes how the road is being used in the UK. So if you want to put in any different change, parking or well, it could be anything, could be loading bays, you need a traffic regulation order to change it. And we're digitalising all of that in the UK, and the work has actually been accelerating quite quickly. And yesterday we had a conference on it run by us with government. And it's a great opportunity because actually all of these notices that you may see on the roads of the UK are being put into a central system that the government will run and will receive digital orders. And really that's quite exciting because there's a huge amount of potential that comes from that, both in terms of local authorities engaging with the public, but also in terms of how we use that data, in terms of knowing what's going on in the road, understanding better where there's sort of where a change in the road could lead to some other problem down on the network, understanding parking better and how that operates. And currently the status of that is the local authorities are doing it, but this will be mandatory in the next few years, really, or probably by the end of the year. So it's currently this digitalisation is currently in private beta. There's the Department of Transport has a system available. It's going to move soon to public beta, and then the government will require local authorities to put their digital traffic regulation orders into the system. And also, obviously, it was part of this Automated Vehicle Act. One of the things that this will do is enable AVs because they'll be able to provide the data on road conditions to automated vehicle manufacturers and service providers. National Parking Platform, this is another initiative that's going on, and again led by government, although they're now spinning it off to a private sector. And so what this is basically in the UK, if you're trying to park somewhere, you get a whole number of different digital providers, service providers that you can pay through to pay for a parking space on your phone. And it's been quite a big gripe of the public that different apps are in different locations. So if you go to London, a London borough, you might have to download one app, and if you go to Birmingham, you might have to download another. So what the government's been looking to do is actually bring the parking operators, the service providers, those that provide the apps, together and create this national parking platform. And what that basically means is the data will go into one central platform. In terms of if you're the public and you're trying to park somewhere, you'll be able to download any app. It will still be private sector. This is not a public. It won't mean a public app, but it will mean that if you like using Ringo, one of the big providers in the UK, you can download their app anywhere around the country. So they've been trialing this for a long time. They have around 200 local authorities ready to do this. The new government came in, so there's been a bit of a change around about how they want to do this. But fundamentally, you can see the kind of structure of how it works between the parking operators, the service providers, and the customers. And again, there's a huge amount of potential from this, because ultimately we're going to have one central repository for a huge amount of data, and what that can mean is maybe changes for electric vehicle charging, and even potential for road user charging and things like that. So it's quite an exciting platform that we're hoping will launch fully soon. And how am I doing from time, Sanni?
5 minutes, please, Max.
5 minutes. Okay, I'll run through things quickly. So the only other thing I'll cover on in terms of the what's different initiatives that are going on is open data, which is something that's we're already well progressed on here in the UK, but increasingly are looking to integrate different open data systems. So Transport for London have had an open data initiative for years, and they see about £130 million of annual benefits from that, 500 jobs created, and they opened it up to the market for different providers, app providers in the private sector to develop services, and 600 plus were developed from that. It's worth saying that there's other mayors and other mayoral combined authorities, other cities that are replicating what TfL are doing, but there are also national schemes. So the Bus Open Data Service, that was introduced in 2017, basically the bus operators have to send data to BODS, the Bus Open Data Service, so that it's open for use, and that now allows people to see when their bus is, the apps and different platforms to be made that allow people to understand things like ticketing, bus reliability, journey times, all of that type of information. Street managers, another one, that's around what road works. So if there's road works, they get put into a central system. And rail data marketplace, that's more of a licensing structure where you can sort of download different data from train operators. And as Mark said, that we have various different train operators around the UK, so there's not one operator yet, and that will change in the coming years, because we're going to legislation's been introduced to bring train operators under, or the train operations under public control under one entity called Great British Railways. But that rail data marketplace again provides a whole range of different data about the rail system. And we are looking at digital twins. I think what's really interesting in the UK is bringing all of this data together. Is starting to now, we're now looking at how we bring BODS, Street Manager, digital traffic regulation orders, national parking platform. How do we bring that all together? And can we have one view of the network for operations, but also can we have move more to a MAS system where the public know where their bus is and how that links to their train, and can they pay through it through one service? So it's quite exciting times at the moment. Right, I'll quickly go into this, which is interchange, what to expect. Sanni already mentioned that it's fantastic that we've got the Finnish and Estonian delegation coming over. We have our conference on the 4th of March. We have we have speakers from government, clients, industry, and really what the day on the 4th of March will be about is talking about that integrated transport network. So we've got a speaker from the Roads Authority, National Highways, from government on the bus reforms they're making. We also have a speaker on rail, who's going to talk about rail innovation, and we're just confirming a speaker on active travel as well. And then throughout the day, we have panels looking at things like digitalisation, decarbonisation, and an international one that I know colleagues from Finland and Estonia are speaking on. So have a look at the agenda. The link will be shared around. It's worth saying that our conference is only one thing in Interchange. So Interchange is a massive conference that is attended by most of the transport authorities, if not all. A lot of them are all combined authorities, government, and a huge amount of others. So if you have a look on this 4th of March, you can see on the right ITS UK's conference with the AWS logo. That's our event, but there's also across the 2 days 2 keynotes halls, there's an exhibition hall, there's round tables that will be launched, I think, shortly, partner theatres, and then there's Google have a separate area where they present on what they're doing, and that runs for 2 days. So it really is, if you want an overview of the UK market, it will really help you. And in the exhibition hall, there's a huge number of the transport authorities, Network Rail, National Highways, Transport for Greater Manchester, Transport for London, all will be exhibiting. So you can go up to them and talk to them too. Right, very quickly, if I have time, I just wanted to highlight Birmingham 2027. So the ITS UK, along with Birmingham and the Department for Transport and Ertico ITS Europe, are hosting the World Congress in Birmingham in 27 in 2 years. It's a long way away, but it's coming down the line quickly. I'll book it in your diaries. It's going to be in October, and really Birmingham's a fantastic city to visit. It's got a huge amount of history in the industrial heritage of the UK, but also recently has been doing more. It's one of the future transport zones. It's been investing a huge amount in smart mobility, so there's a huge amount to see there in terms of what they're doing. And just to give you an overview, this is where it will be held at the National Exhibition Centre. It's a huge space, and we're going to have a huge number of different expertise from the UK, a huge number of companies and organisations presenting, so well worth looking at. And there's lots of reasons to go to the UK as well. And I would say actually don't wait till 2027 if you're planning to come to the Interchange next month. Then actually make sure you spend some time coming and seeing the different tourist sites, some of the natural beauty around the UK, because it is really fantastic. That's it. I'll stop there because I'm sure I'm over time now. Sanni, I hope that was all right.
Thank you, Max. That was really, really insightful, and got to say that Birmingham definitely is in the agenda for ITS Finland, probably also ITS Estonia. I know we promised a Q&A, but I am also conscious about timing, and our 2 following presentations from companies working in the UK, and I propose there are some good questions in the chat that Mark and Max will answer to those questions by writing in the chat, and we will move forward with the next presentation from Bikeep. Kristjan Lind, please, can you share your presentation?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Kristjan Lind. I'm the founder and CEO of Bikeep, and today I basically want to share with you in a very quick manner our experience in UK, which is basically purely from our perspective, right? So I do have few takeaways to share there. You should be able to see my screen now, I presume so. Oh, sorry. So, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Excuse me?
Good.
Yes.
Yes, it's good.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then I know. So, just to offer a bit of context what we are doing, so we would understand from which perspective this is coming from. Bikeep is providing smart bicycle parking services. So basically, it's as a smart bike rack with a built-in lock. So the users are using app to access it. It has a digital side. The municipalities are using a back-end dashboard to monitor it. So digital side to the municipalities as well, but also the physical side. The items are actually infrastructure items installed on the streets. And this is what we are offering also for other local providers. So we do cooperate with UK manufacturers to offer the same sort of smart access methods for their built infrastructure. And in UK, basically, we are collaborating with, I dare to say, like bigger and more complex accounts. You know, our equipment is installed, for example, in the Grand Thames railway stations. Only still few, but you know, there's about 5-6 stations. University of Hertfordshire, Imperial College London, and a couple of municipalities. So everything that I'll be speaking about is coming basically from that perspective and dealing with these kinds of customer accounts. And with Bikeep, we're doing it also globally. So here, while I'm speaking, I'm mixing a bit of our global experience and trying to highlight maybe what's more specific in the UK, but also from the perspective, you know, as an Estonian, which is relatively similar to Finnish or being a Finn, exporting the transportation services. Right. So based on our experience and on approaching these accounts in the last 5-6 years, maybe top takeaways that I would want to share here is that what has been surprising is how segmented the market is. Right. There's a lot of different organizations approaching the same area from different angles. Like, for example, many times it's being discussed, though, some sort of service is active in London, but also in London, I mean, as we are putting the physical infrastructure in, there's maybe above 30 the amount of boroughs, which means that there's actually 30 groups of people making decisions, and within those groups of people also, you know, several. So very segmented. And my recommendation would be that before you start approaching any kind of either a customer account or anything like that, really map it out and understand who else is important in the decision making, and how is their financing or funding working, because very often this is a very decisive factor. Also, what has brought us our success has definitely been a strong cooperation with local partners. We position ourselves as technology providers, but nowhere we sort of wish to provide the service solely on our own, but we always collaborate with local partners to streamline the process, right? For example, selling to the municipalities themselves, we tend to choose who already has some sort of a framework contract in place in order to have initial pilots. Because this is making it significantly easier, and as the buyers at the end of the day are also the human beings who tend to look for easier methods. If you're able to sell to a local partner who has a framework in place, this makes it a lot easier. And also another benefit of having a local partner, and what we are using is sometimes also the sales agent, is like knowing the local language, and by this I don't mean English, but rather the expressions in use, right? Because we all think that we understand English. Maybe one of the funniest examples that we've had over the years is one of our teammates was after a customer review call, was like, oh, everything is great, right? Really happy. And you know how Estonians and Finns are very direct in their language, so thus they're very direct in the understanding as well, right? But on that particular case, what the customer basically communicated is like, we appreciate the part of your service, what you're doing, but maybe you also want to consider, and then dropped something in, right? But with an Estonian brain, the dear teammate heard is like, they appreciate us, right? So that's a positive mark. But while in the UK, the language is more subtle, right? So thus, in many cases, understanding why something is being communicated is very important. And for us, having local sales agents on the call with us has been, sometimes when after the call they debrief us, is like, look, the reason why they said it this way, we believe that and that is important. So yet again, emphasizing the importance of local partners. We are doing it through the sales agents and through reseller companies who we include into the projects that we are building up. Also, another one, have patience. From our experience on other markets as well. I mean, infrastructure sector is moving slow, but in UK's case, I dare to say it's maybe considering even bit longer sales cycles. So in often cases when we have thought that some project has basically died away for us, very surprisingly, months and months later, the customer account comes back and they say like, okay, everybody, now I'm ready to proceed. So they do take time. I think it's, in my experience, it's tied with the first point that it's very segmented, and often, especially in this infrastructure sector, the decisions are not only made by one organization, but they also consult and get their approvals and inform the others, and this is taking a lot of time. So in the UK's market, I say from our experience, have also patience. And also maybe bit more specific, introduce and sell Estonia and also Finland, right? I'm not that familiar with the Finnish experience, but as an Estonian into the UK market, I do feel that whenever I sell the arguments why purchasing from an Estonian company or collaborating with an Estonian company, I give them the justifications, because even if the questions are not being asked, these are still in the people's mind, right? The good old Eastern European reference, and also nowadays, I mean, even though it's not discussed that much, still the Ukraine war and how this is affecting is a topic. And whenever we address it with our customer accounts and why, all the risks are mitigated and give them the answers, they are able to forward these answers whenever somebody else is discussing it within their organizations. In case of Estonia, just highlighting the UK-based successful services that are also from Estonia. I guess the same works for Finland. In our case, it's like Wise, Skype, very well-known, Bolt, etc. And just highlighting, like, if you trust these kinds of things, believe it, we can also make it happen. And maybe on the final point is be present when needed. Nowadays, when there's a lot of video conferences happening, I personally still believe that it's important to understand when is your moment to be present, to shake hands and show that you're actually a real human being. For these kinds of ITS initiatives are absolutely perfect. You don't have to be present all the time, but whenever you are present, this has also enabled us to win a lot of trust within the customers and partners. The flights to London are super easy, so be sure to grab these kinds of opportunities. So these are our very brief takeaways. With that, I would leave maybe 1 to 2 minutes if there's time for questions. If not, feel free to outreach to me. I'm happy to sort of share more in detail our experience and brainstorm and discuss about different approaches to the market.
Thank you, Kristjan. I think there was one question in the chat, but I will ask you to answer it in writing so we can start with our next presenter. So Johnny Ojeil from Ramboll will be presenting the next one, and I will quickly share the slides. Johnny, are you ready?
I am ready. Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, all. I'll start by saying greetings from Birmingham, and I would certainly recommend Birmingham and its surroundings as a really nice place to visit. So I'll try and run through my slides due to time constraints. So next, please. I just want to really draw your attention to the ITS UK published manifesto. I think that was referred to earlier in the chat, which was in June 24. And in terms of really when we're starting to look at transport, in particular connectivity, autonomy, integration, sustainability, and society as a whole, social value is becoming more and more important in the UK in all projects. So be aware of that. And obviously economic growth, industry growth is a focus of UK government, particularly the most recent announcement by our Chancellor. Next, please. I'll give you an example of one particular area of work that at the moment is on hold, but it's the UK road network, where a lot of technology was used to try and manage the traffic situation along motorways in the UK. That was predominantly due to the fact that the UK is not really a big fan of adding more motorways to the United Kingdom, but it's more making best use of what's there. And in this case, a lot of hard shoulders were converted to a running lane, which meant your stopping lanes for emergencies were reduced. And during that process, there were a few deaths which caught the national headlines. And between government and national highways, there was a decision to stop them for a period of 4 to 5 years. The reason being that they wanted to gather more evidence and data related to safety and operational safety. Most probably, the program will be reintroduced, we kind of think, but there will be opportunities for you guys to try and use technology, etc., to basically manage the motorway better by, for example, reducing speed, stopping platooning. But as you can see on most of our major motorways, there has been a rollout. And if you do come to Birmingham, visit the M42 nearby is a good example of that rollout. Next, please. We have in the UK a big spike in urban traffic management and control centres that have been springing up, and that is an area of growth. The most recent one was in Birmingham itself, and that came to fruition just before the Commonwealth Games in 2022. And it's all about, as you know, probably, bringing together live data, trying to adjust to real-time issues that arise, maximizing the network and trying to make it work better. And also within that, managing incidents and providing better information for all road users. But that is gaining momentum, and it's an area that you may wish to talk to authorities about, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But next slide, please. In the UK itself, we do have now the introduction of smart ticketing systems, and maybe we're a little bit behind to other countries, but that has been introduced. And if you go, for example, to the West Midlands, you have a system called Swift that allows you to use rail and buses in an integrated way. It is a fundamental concept of trying to get more people to use public transport and to disseminate more information. On that note, if you are visiting Interchange, there will be a lot of public authorities there, local authorities, and it might be useful for you to pick up that conversation with them. I would recommend that. There's some key players there. So this is an ever-evolving market sector that will continue to evolve and develop, because one of the biggest complaints of users is that we don't have an integrated system. And now the government has a very clear policy towards integrated planning for transport, and i.e. bringing it all together. So it will gain momentum, no doubt. Next one, please. Okay, another good example in the UK. Governments are putting a lot of money via devolution, via all sorts of money coming out of London now centrally and going to authorities in and around the region. Birmingham is another good example where a lot of bus priority corridors are being implemented. At this moment in time, as we speak, the Transport Authority for West Midlands is out tendering an 80 million contract for bus corridors in the West Midlands. And that's design, concept design, detailed design, and then contractor on site. So you will see a lot of these. And as you know, with kind of bus corridors, you need all sorts of technology to support that corridor, whether it's looking at signals, whether it's looking at bus stops, priority, all sorts of technological interventions that are needed when you are designing and delivering a corridor. So a lot more is to come. And any new road building, which has been really dramatically reduced in the UK, if any road building does happen, you'll be rest assured there will be some bus corridor included in that, because mass transport is something that the government is taking very seriously, and a push from the private car to two things, active travel and public transport, is kind of where the policy is heading. So you'll see a lot of money being invested in this sector, compared to your traditional just build a road and provide for more capacity. Next, please. Also micromobility, very briefly touch on this because I think it has been covered, but it is picking up momentum, and there are various types of shared micromobility that you see. London's a good example, Birmingham's another one, etc., etc. But that does rely on GPS technology, geofencing, to track rides, enforcing parking restrictions. I noticed the traffic regulation order and digitalization that came in. That's more car orientated, but you can see where technology is going. It's not just for car users, but also for micromobility, for active travel, and looking at issues like optimizing charging regimes and vehicle redistribution. One of the biggest issues in towns and cities is that something like 10% of traffic is lost traffic that's just going around looking for car parking spaces. So you can imagine if you manage to manage that 10%, you'd get a lot more efficient system. Next, please. Telematics has been used within freight and logistics also in the UK. And that's something, again, that you might want to talk to, for example, operators, not just local authorities, but operators are investing a lot in their fleets, and really for various reasons. If you want to call it selfishly, various reasons. Things like looking at optimizing routes to try and then reduce your fuel, adjusting routes to real-time conditions, and also real-time update on vehicle locations for fleet managers and customers to benefit alike. There is a logistics carbon reduction scheme which was introduced as far back as 2009, but there is a commitment definitely within the UK to reduce emissions. So trials are going with all sorts of EV type vehicles, with autonomous vehicles, etc. But the freight issue is a kind of standalone independent issue within the UK that a lot of towns and cities are grappling with. And there's more and more restrictions on freight traffic penetrating city centres. So thinking about the last mile is really something that comes into play when you are looking at how to manage a network or a sensitive area within a city, and therefore ITS, telematics, etc., become really important in this field for you to again explore. Next, please. Okay, if I briefly touch on the role of the private sector. Again, it's useful to try and make connections with contractors. Contractors in the UK are always looking for something to advance their case, and therefore early engagement with contractors on design and technology is really, really important. And all the main contractors, are involved in this field. We do have some private finance initiatives, such as the M25 and the M6, as alluded to, and there's a couple more schemes coming on board. So, in terms of charging, for example, the M6 toll, the UK is not alien to that, but I don't think the M6 toll in itself has been a particular success story. And that's not necessarily because of the technology introduced or the charging, but it's just mainly because there's an alternative route that people find cheaper to use, although it might take them longer to navigate. So I think, one might argue that the planning of that maybe needed better attention. But the message here is that, tolling in the UK is not something as a surprise, and I think that was mentioned a couple of slides before, and I'm just reiterating that. If I move on to public transport, as alluded to, you do have corridors with what we call sprint corridors, fast buses services. They don't stop every 500 meters, but it does produce a fast service from one area to the other. And one was introduced in Birmingham before the Commonwealth Games from one of the stadiums to the city centre. And there's quite a few sprint corridors that are also mounting. And again, part of that is you provide bus priority corridors for these sprint services from towns and cities, for example, in the West Midlands. As you might know or not, the bus networks are operated by private companies and mainly through franchise agreements. And main operators are Stagecoach and First Bus. And again, if they're around at places like Interchange, again, do share with them what you can offer, because they are also looking to enhance and have more reliability, frequency and resilience of their services. So I do think you might benefit from talking to them. And cycling, again, I've touched on that earlier. And you'll see that cropping up in most major cities in the UK. Next, please. So if we move on to opportunities and challenges, opportunities are really to try and improve the user experience. Transport, and particularly transport planning, and ITS is part of that, is all about the customer and the end user and improving that overall experience. whether it's planning simple fare structures, seamless payment, or a more convenient, reliable, resilient journey. Mainly you're trying to reduce disruption. And you're trying also to integrate different transport systems. So for example, if you're coming in on a train and then you want to catch a bus to go to a destination in the center, you should be able to do that in a seamless manner. Notwithstanding, we need to improve safety. We need to obviously look at sustainability, and sustainability is a big player in the UK. And again, in one of the presentations, low emission zones were mentioned, for example, and they're propping up all up and down the country. There's well over 10, if not 14 cities that are looking or have implemented some form of control of the private car penetrating its city centre core. And that will continue. And these zones will get bigger and other cities will come on board. So again, using technology that you are involved in, that will be an area of opportunity. So if you are meeting any local authorities at any of the functions you're attending, then do make contact with them. Because not every city is well advanced. You know, the most noticeable ones are places like London, but Birmingham only introduced one recently, a few years ago. Bristol is another one, for example, and Bath. So you do have a lot of sensitivity in some of these cities. Some are very historical, you know, very old cities, and how you manage them, you have to rely on technology, because you can't do any road building, you can't do any road widening. You just have to really manage it within, you know, a 400, 500, 600-year-old type city. So that's where really technology comes in. Challenges, as usual, investment costs are high, government money is a lot less. There are some really stringent regulatory and policy standards to comply with. It's not insurmountable, but you know, it is a challenge. And also there's this barrier of people resisting change. And you know, therefore the need to build up public confidence in new technologies coming on board is really important. In the UK, you know, when we're applying for funding for transport, we do have a bit of an issue that we have to really justify business cases, and that can be a protracted procurement and business case because sometimes, you know, regions are fighting for money from central government. Therefore, the demand far outweighs the supply of money. So you'll see some of these cases. There's a lot of years of planning before anything comes to fruition down your end of the stream. Next, please. I think there's one more, maybe. Two more specific opportunities in the UK, just to mention a few. And I think some, maybe Lower Thames has already been alluded to, but we also have a big rail promotion that was also supported by government recently and seen as an important component, and that's East-West Rail, you know, linking the Cambridge and Oxford area. And there's a bit of an idea that they potentially want to have a bit of a Silicon Valley along that route. So to attract businesses, but make rail as one of the fundamental travel modes to and from that kind of area. And it's very rare in the UK to kind of have an east-west rail movement that's really, really good. Most of our systems, whether they're road or rail, are kind of north-south orientated. So, but this is something that everybody's welcomed. But you know, this east-west rail, the planning of it started about 6 years ago, and it's going on still. But again, I would say this is a big opportunity for you guys. Lower Thames Crossing, like I said, has been mentioned, and the Smart Motorways program I've spoken about earlier in the presentation. That won't start immediately, but again, I think if you're talking to people like National Highways and you have ideas, I would recommend that you approach them. Although there's a lull and they're looking at the safety record, it will come back in some shape or form. And I think there's one more slide to finish with. And as you can see, there's all sorts of technology and innovation and community-centric cities. And I've just given an example here. The Edinburgh City Council are creating what's called a new security centre. And what they're trying to do there is just centralise software to really take on board a few items such as public safety services, urban planning, and they're really trying to manage all interfaces through a single interface. So technology really comes into this, and really, again, recommend to talk to Edinburgh City Council if you do come across them or try and make contact with them. It's all under the Technology Innovation for Community-Centric Cities. And finally, the West of England Combined Authority, that's what you see in the figure on your right-hand side. It involves quite a few cities and quite a large area. And they've just sent out an RFP, and they're looking at introducing mass and seeing how that might work across their whole area. So, you know, that is a definite real live opportunity for you guys to try and see where that goes. On that note, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in the UK when you visit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Johnny. That was really, really insightful. And I believe that Ramboll is also joining in the change, right? So the delegation from Finland and Estonia gets to hopefully meet you there as well. Thank you to our speakers and the audience for this webinar. I saw that you were really active on the chat, which is great. If there are any questions that remained unanswered, we will check those through and get back to you with emails. And with that, I would like to end this webinar and wish you all a very nice day.